elbows in all the wrong places, and sent the ball right to the boundary. There was a shout of approval, and everyone clapped. Joseph was aware of a movement somewhere behind him, and half turned, expecting a grounds official, perhaps to say it was time for lemonade and cucumber sandwiches. But it was his own brother, Matthew, who was walking toward him, his shoulders tight, no grace in his movement. He was wearing a light grey city suit, as if he had newly arrived from London. Joseph started across the green, anxiety rising quickly. Why was his brother here in Cambridge, interrupting a match on a Sunday afternoon? "Matthew, what is it?" he said as he reached him. Matthew stopped. His face was so pale it seemed almost bloodless. He was 28, 7 years the younger, broader-shouldered, and fair where Joseph was dark. He was steadying himself with difficulty, and he gulped before he found his voice. "It's—" He cleared his throat. There was a kind of desperation in his eyes. "It's mother and father," he said hoarsely. "There's been an accident." Joseph refused to grasp what he had said. "An accident?" Matthew nodded, struggling to govern his ragged breathing. "In the car. They're both dead." For a moment, the words had no meaning for Joseph. Instantly, his father's face came to his mind, lean and gentle, blue eyes steady. It was impossible that he could be dead. "The car went off the road," Matthew was saying, "just before the Hoxton Mill Bridge." His voice sounded strange and far away. Behind Joseph, they were still playing cricket. He heard the sound of the ball and another burst of applause. "Joseph." Matthew's hand was on his arm, the grip tight. Joseph nodded and tried to speak, but his throat was dry. "I'm sorry," Matthew said quietly. "I wish I hadn't had to tell you like this. It's all right, Matthew. He changed his mind, still trying to grasp the reality. "The Hoxton Road? Where were they going?" Matthew's fingers tightened on his arm. They began to walk slowly, close together, over the sun-baked grass. There was a curious dizziness in the heat. The sweat trickled down Joseph's skin, and inside he was cold. Matthew stopped again. "Father telephoned me late yesterday evening," he replied huskily, as if the words were almost unbearable for him. "He said someone had given him a document outlining a conspiracy so hideous it would change the world we know, that it would ruin England and everything we stand for. Forever." He sounded defiant now, the muscles of his neck and jaw clenched, as if he barely had mastery of himself. Joseph's mind whirled. What should he do? The words hardly made sense. John Reevely had been a Member of Parliament until 1912, 2 years ago. He had resigned for reasons he had not discussed, but he had never lost his interest in political affairs, nor his care for honesty in government. Perhaps he had simply been ready to spend more time reading, indulging his love of philosophy, poking around in antique and second-hand shops looking for a bargain. More often, he was just talking with people, listening to stories, swapping eccentric jokes, and adding to his collection of limericks. "A conspiracy to ruin England and everything we stand for?" Joseph repeated incredulously. "No," Matthew corrected him with precision. "A conspiracy that would ruin it. That was not the main purpose, simply a side effect." "What conspiracy? By whom?" Joseph demanded. Matthew's skin was so white it was almost grey. "I don't know. He was bringing it to me today." Joseph started to ask why, and then stopped. The answer was the one thing that made sense. Suddenly, at least 2 facts cohered. John Reevely had wanted Joseph to study medicine, and when his firstborn son had left it for the church, he had then wanted Matthew to become a doctor. But Matthew had read modern history and languages here at Cambridge, and then he joined the Secret Intelligence Service. If there was such a plot, John would understandably have notified his younger son, not his elder. Joseph swallowed, the air catching in his throat. "I see." Matthew's grip eased on him slightly. He had known the news longer and had more time to grasp its truth. He was searching